It's January 10th, 1977, a warm summer night in Melbourne, Australia. The air is thick with heat, the kind that sticks to your skin and hums with the distant buzz of cicadas. In the working-class suburb of Collingwood, on a quiet little stretch called Easey Street, the world feels still, ordinary even. Two young women, Suzanne Armstrong and Susan Bartlett, are at home in their modest brick house at number 147. Suzanne, just 27, is a single mother cradling dreams for her 16-month-old son, Gregory, asleep in his cot. Susan, 28, a school teacher with a gentle smile, is her closest friend, sharing this new chapter in the city after growing up together in the small town of Benalla. They're living their lives, simple, hopeful, unguarded. The last time anyone saw them alive, they were just two friends settling into the night, the glow of a kitchen light spilling faintly through the curtains. But what happened next would tear through that stillness, leaving a wound so deep it would echo across decades. 3 days later, on January 13th, a neighbor steps onto the porch of 147 Easey Street. Maybe it's the silence that feels wrong, or the faint cries they've heard drifting through the walls. They knock. No answer. They push the door open, and the world shifts. Inside, the house is a tableau of unimaginable violence. Suzanne lies in her bedroom, her body bearing the scars of a savage assault. Susan is crumpled near the front door, just steps from where her friend fell, her life extinguished by wounds. Blood stains the walls, pools on the floor, marks a struggle that ended in silence. And yet, in the next room, a tiny voice breaks through the horror. Little Gregory, dehydrated and alone, crying in his cot. For days he's been there, surrounded by the wreckage of his mother's final moments, untouched by the hands that took her life. The discovery sends Melbourne reeling. Collingwood is no stranger to tough times, but this is different. This is a crime that reaches into the heart of a home, a place where people should feel safe, and rips it apart. Detectives descend on the scene, seasoned men who've seen their share of darkness. Even they pause, shaken by the ferocity of the attack, the sheer number of wounds, the questions that hang heavy in the air. Who could do this? Why these two women? And how could a killer walk away, leaving a baby behind to bear witness? The police find no forced entry, just a footprint on the front windowsill, a light left burning in the kitchen, a note from Suzanne's boyfriend who stopped by after the murders, oblivious to the scene inside. Another note, pinned to the door about a lost puppy, flutters in the breeze, a cruel echo of normalcy against the chaos within. The investigation grips the city. Hundreds of leads flood in. Neighbors report strange cars, fleeting shadows, a man seen walking away from Easey Street in the early hours. The community locks its doors, watches its children a little closer, whispers theories over fences and pints. But every trail runs cold. For nearly 50 years, the Easey Street murders haunt Melbourne, a story told in hushed tones, a mystery that buries itself deep in the city's bones. The families of Suzanne and Susan wait, their lives frozen in that January night, while Gregory grows up without his mother, carrying a loss he can't even name. For decades, it seems the truth will stay buried. Detectives retire with the case still gnawing at them, unable to sleep some nights, replaying the details in their minds. The evidence, blood, semen, fragments of a nightmare, sits in storage, waiting for a future no one can predict. Melbourne moves on but never forgets. The house on Easey Street stands as a quiet monument to the unanswered, its walls holding secrets no one can unlock. Until, after 47 years, a phone rings in a police station. It's September 2024, and everything changes. A man steps off a plane in Rome, thousands of miles from Melbourne. His name is Perikilis, Kouroumblis, 65 years old, an Australian-Greek dual citizen who's been living in Greece, out of reach. But this time, he's not slipping away. Italian police arrest him at Leonardo da Vinci Airport, an Interpol red notice flashing his name. Back in Melbourne, detectives have been working in the shadows, piecing together a puzzle from 1977 with tools no one had back then. Advances in DNA technology have cracked open the past, blood and semen from that horrific night, preserved by some miracle of foresight, now point to him. Kouroumblis, a teenager living just 300 meters from Easey Street at the time, a student at Suzanne's school, a boy already known to police. Days after the murders, he was stopped with a blood-stained knife in his car, a knife later tied to the killings. Yet somehow he walked free, until now. What really happened that night on Easey Street? The answer is closer than it's ever been, but it's still just out of reach. Welcome to Unreal Minds, where we break down real-life cases that leave you questioning everything. If you love true crime, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new case. Now let's get into it. Before Easey Street became a name etched in Melbourne's memory, it was simply home to Suzanne Armstrong and Suzanne Bartlett, two women whose lives were rich with promise, tethered by a friendship that stretched back to their earliest years. To understand the weight of what happened, we need to step into their world, to see them not as headlines, but as the people they were. Suzanne Armstrong was born in 1949, a daughter of Benalla, a small town 200 kilometers northeast of Melbourne. She grew up in a close-knit community where she met Suzanne Bartlett in primary school. The two were inseparable, their bond forged through shared dreams and the simplicity of rural life. By her mid-20s, Suzanne's path took her far from Victoria's rolling hills. She traveled to Greece, a journey that marked a turning point. There she gave birth to Gregory in 1975, a bright-eyed boy who became her world. Returning to Australia as a single mother, she carried the strength of someone determined to carve out a future for herself and her son. At 27, she was vibrant, warm, and fiercely devoted, a woman who laughed easily and loved deeply. Friends described her as someone who could light up a room, her resilience matched only by her tenderness toward Gregory. Suzanne Bartlett, born a year later in 1950, was the creative spirit of the duo. Also from Benalla, she pursued her passion for education, training as a teacher, and eventually landing a role at Collingwood Education Center. She taught arts and crafts, her classroom a haven of color and imagination for her students. At 28, Suzanne was known for her infectious laugh and her knack for seeing beauty in the everyday. Colleagues remembered her as generous and inspiring, a woman who brought sketches and stories to life with her hands and her heart. She had moved to Melbourne with Suzanne in 1976, the pair renting the house on Easey Street as a fresh start, a place to build new memories in a city buzzing with possibility. Their lives before the tragedy were a tapestry of small joys and bold steps. Suzanne spent her days caring for Gregory, balancing motherhood with dreams of stability. She'd often take him for walks along the Yarra River, her friends later recalled, his tiny hand in hers as she planned a life beyond the struggles of single parenthood. Suzanne filled her time with teaching and art, her evenings spent sketching or chatting with Suzanne over cups of tea in their modest kitchen. They were a team, Suzanne's quiet determination paired with Suzanne's lively spirit, two friends who'd left Benalla behind but carried its warmth with them. It was the afternoon of January 13th, 1977, when the quiet of Easey Street in Collingwood, Melbourne, was pierced by an unsettling discovery. A neighbor troubled by days of silence from number 147 and the faint, haunting sound of a toddler's cries drifting through an open window, approached the house. The front door hung slightly ajar, swaying gently in the summer breeze, a detail that sent a chill down their spine. They called out, their voice trembling, "Suzanne? Susan?" But no reply came. Steeling themselves, they stepped inside, unprepared for the nightmare that awaited. The air was heavy, thick with a sickly sweet stench that clawed at the throat. In the dim glow filtering through drawn curtains, the scene unfolded like a tableau of horror. Suzanne Armstrong's body lay in the bedroom, her once vibrant presence reduced to a still, broken form on the hardwood floor. The room was a chaos of overturned dreams, a jewelry box spilled across the dresser, a bedside lamp shattered, its shade askew. Near the front door, Suzanne Bartlett's body rested, her posture frozen in a silent plea, hands raised as if she'd tried to fend off the inevitable. The carpet beneath her was matted with dark stains, the walls marked by frantic smears, a testament to a struggle that ended in silence. Every corner of the house whispered violence, from the skewed picture frames to the faint hum of a radio left on. its static drone a ghostly underscore to the scene. Yet amid this devastation, a fragile thread of life persisted. In a small nursery, 16-month-old Gregory Armstrong clung to survival. For 3 agonizing days, since the night of January 10th, he'd been alone, his cries unanswered, his tiny world bounded by the bars of his cot. Hungry and frail, his cheeks streaked with tears, he was a living paradox, untouched by the brutality that claimed his mother, yet abandoned to fend for himself in a house-turned tomb. The neighbor's heart raced as they lifted him from the cot, his small body trembling but alive. How had he endured? And why had the killer spared him? These questions lingered like shadows, deepening the mystery of that fateful night. The initial investigation kicked into high gear. Detectives noted the absence of forced entry, no splintered frames, no shattered glass, just that lone footprint smudged on the front windowsill, a cryptic hint at the killer's path. In the kitchen, a half-eaten meal sat cold on the table, a fork abandoned mid-bite, suggesting the attack came without warning. The phone, still connected, hadn't dialed for help. Investigators theorized the killer might have been welcomed inside, a familiar face turned deadly. Evidence collection was meticulous. Gloved hands bagged a stray hair from the couch, photographed scuff marks near the door, and traced the faint outline of a shoe in the dust. Outside, officers knocked on doors, pressing for answers. A woman across the street recalled a figure slipping away under cover of darkness on January 11th, their coat pulled tight despite the heat. Another heard a car peel away, its engine roaring into the night. Fragments of a puzzle, but nothing solid. Yet. Meanwhile, paramedics whisked Gregory to safety, his survival a bittersweet note in the chaos. At the hospital, nurses wrapped him in blankets, their hands gentle but their eyes haunted. He was so quiet, one recalled, like he knew something was wrong but couldn't say it. Treated for dehydration, he was a living relic of the tragedy, his innocence a stark counterpoint to the violence that orphaned him. Back at Easey Street, the forensic team worked under floodlights as dusk fell, their shadows dancing across the walls. The house, once a sanctuary, stood as a silent witness to a crime that defied reason, a brutal act that left 2 women dead, a child alone, and a trail of questions winding into the unknown. In those early days, police chased every scrap they could find. A blood-streaked knife turned up, handed over by a teenager named Kouroumblis, who said he'd found it near the crime scene. He was 17 then, a local kid with a story that didn't quite add up, but with no concrete evidence, they couldn't pin him down. Another thread led to a journalist living next door, a man with a questionable past tied to another unsolved case. Years later, DNA would rule him out, but the timing stuck in their minds. The suspect list ballooned to 130, workers from a nearby construction site, drifters spotted in the area, faces that flickered in and out of focus. Yet every lead collapsed, leaving nothing but echoes. By the 1990s, the investigation had stalled, its momentum lost to time. Detectives who'd once pounded the pavement retired with the case unsolved, their notes yellowing in storage. A glimmer came in 1999 when DNA testing targeted 8 key suspects. One had slipped away to the UK, others were tracked down or dug up through family lines, but the results were a bust. No match to the evidence left at the scene. The trail went quiet again, buried under the weight of years. Then in 2017, the case roared back to life. Victoria Police, armed with sharper DNA tools, cracked open the files with renewed fire. They threw a $1 million reward on the table and launched a sweeping operation, targeting 130 persons of interest. 90 still breathing, 41 long gone, their traces hunted through relatives. Among them was Kouroumblis, now in his 60s, living a low-key life in Melbourne. When detectives showed up for a sample, he nodded, agreed, then bolted. He fled to Greece, a country with no extradition treaty, leaving the case dangling once more. The question hung heavy. What was he running from? The breakthrough came in 2024. Kouroumblis, maybe restless, maybe careless, stepped onto Italian soil. At Rome's airport, Interpol closed in, nabbing him on a warrant that had waited years to bite. Back in Melbourne, the news hit like a jolt. DNA was finally in their hands. After 47 years of chasing ghosts, Was this the key to unlock the truth? Or would the Easey Street murders slip away again, one last time? A bustling Wednesday morning in 2024 at Rome's Leonardo da Vinci Airport. Travelers shuffle through customs, oblivious to the tension cutting through the air. Italian police weave through the crowd, their focus locked on one man, Perikilis, Kouroumblis. At 65, he steps off a flight from Greece, unsuspecting, until hands clamp down on his shoulders. Within moments, he's whisked away, fingerprints taken, identity confirmed. He's under arrest, bound for Regina Coeli prison, caught in the web of an Interpol red notice issued by Victoria Police. A cold case from 1977, the Easey Street murders, has just reignited, and Kouroumblis is at its center. Kouroumblis is no ordinary figure. A dual Australian-Greek citizen, he was born in 1959, making him 17 when the brutal Easey Street murders shook Melbourne. Back then, he lived just 300 meters from the crime scene on Bendigo Street, Collingwood, a detail that never sat right with investigators. A student at Collingwood High School, he crossed paths daily with Suzanne Bartlett, one of the victims who taught there. By 2017, he traded Australia for Greece, living quietly, until 2024 pulled him back into the spotlight. Now 65, he's a man whose past has caught up with him, a name tied to one of Australia's most haunting unsolved cases. Why Rome? That's the question buzzing around this arrest. Perry's family insists it was business. His brother Andreas claims a Greek-Australian investor approached Perry about a family property in Greece, inviting him to Rome to seal the deal. Perry boarded the plane, expecting a handshake, not handcuffs. But the timing raises eyebrows. Just one day before his arrival, Italian police received that Interpol notice. Victoria Police won't say a word about orchestrating this. Did they lure him out of Greece where extradition was off the table? The investor's identity remains a shadow, and the truth hangs just out of reach. Let's rewind to 1977. Days after Suzanne Armstrong and Suzanne Bartlett were found dead in their Easey Street home, police stopped a teenage Kouroumblis. In his car, a blood-stained knife. His story, he'd found it near the railway tracks close to the crime scene. No charges followed, evidence was thin, but suspicion lingered. Then in 2017, a breakthrough. DNA technology pointed police back to Perry. They asked for a sample, he agreed, then bolted to Greece. Now reports say DNA, semen from the crime scene, links him to the murders, a thread that's held tight for 47 years. Today, Kouroumblis faces the weight of history. 2 counts of murder for the deaths of Suzanne Armstrong and Suzanne Bartlett, and 1 count of rape tied to Suzanne. The details are grim. Stabbings that left a community reeling, a crime scene that still echoes with unanswered questions. The DNA evidence, once a whisper, now screams his name. He's back in Melbourne, extradited and awaiting trial, his lawyer proclaiming his innocence. The victims' families, after decades of silence, watch closely, hoping for closure. The courtroom looms on the horizon, a stage set for revelations. Perry's agreed to face the music, but what will he say? The DNA is damning, yet his story hasn't wavered. Could new evidence surface? Witnesses, alibis, cracks in the case? As the trial nears, one question burns. After 47 years, will justice finally speak? Or will the Easey Street murders keep their secrets locked away? June 3, 2025. The Melbourne courthouse looms on the horizon, a stage set for a reckoning 47 years in the making. Perikilis, Kouroumblis, steps into the dock, charged with the 1977 Easey Street murders, 2 counts of murder, 1 count of rape. The air hums with tension as the city holds its breath. This isn't just a trial, it's a collision of past and present, a chance to unmask the truth or watch it slip away forever. What happens next? The prosecution will unveil their weapon. DNA evidence, a thread they claim ties Kouroumblis to the blood-soaked floor of 147 Easey Street, where Suzanne Armstrong and Suzanne Bartlett met their brutal end. But this isn't a clean slate. The samples have waited decades, stored, tested, retested. Advances in science have sharpened the lens, but time has a way of blurring edges. Was it handled perfectly back in '77? Has it sat too long in some evidence locker, vulnerable to the years. The defense will pounce on those questions, aiming to snap that thread before the jury's eyes. Could there be others? The Easey Street case has never been tidy. Over the years, names have surfaced. Suspects who drifted through Collingwood streets or lingered too close to the scene. Take Edward Charles Baldock, a local with a violent streak questioned early on, or the journalist next door, scrutinized until DNA cleared him in '99. Then there's the sheer ferocity of the attack. Suzanne stabbed 27 times, Susan 55. Could one man wield that kind of chaos alone? Some whisper of a second shadow, a partner whose footprints have faded into the night. The trial might shine a light, or leave them lurking beyond reach. How strong is this DNA? It's the linchpin, the prosecution's ace. In 2017, Victoria police matched it to Kouroumblis after he handed over a sample, then bolted to Greece. Extradited from Rome in 2023, he's here now, facing the music. But 47 years is a long time. Experts say old samples can degrade, cross-contaminate, or mislead. Was the chain of custody ironclad? One misstep, one doubt, and the case could unravel. The jury will wrestle with that, balancing science against shadows. What if they say not guilty? Picture it. The verdict lands and Kouroumblis walks free. The families, Suzanne's son, just a toddler in '77, Susan's kin who've waited decades, left staring into an abyss. The case stays open, a wound that won't heal. New leads could spark. Maybe a witness, silent all these years, steps forward. Or maybe it's just silence, the killer's identity locked away with the dead. For Kouroumblis, freedom won't erase the stares, the whispers. Guilt or innocence, he'll carry this forever. But here's the twist that keeps you guessing. What if the trial cracks open something else? A name buried in the files, a clue missed in the haze of '77. As the gavel falls, the truth could shift toward justice or deeper into the unknown. Who really crossed that threshold on Easey Street? The answer's coming. Or is it? The clock is ticking toward June 3rd, 2025, when Perikilis Kouroumblis will face trial for the Easey Street murders. For 47 years, the deaths of Suzanne Armstrong and Susan Bartlett have haunted Melbourne. Two women stabbed to death in their Collingwood home, a crime so brutal it left a toddler, Gregory, alone amid the chaos. Decades later, DNA evidence has finally pointed to Kouroumblis, a man who lived just streets away in 1977. But the story's far from over. This isn't a neat ending tied with a bow. The evidence, hailed as a breakthrough by Victoria Police in 2023, hinges on a single thread of science. Will it hold up in court or snap under cross-examination? Kouroumblis, now 67, claims innocence, and his defense is gearing up to challenge every shred of that DNA. What if the lab got it wrong? What if someone else slipped into that house on Easey Street all those years ago, leaving no trace until now? Picture this, January 1977. Melbourne's summer heat hangs heavy. Suzanne and Susan, both 27, are settling into their new life together, unaware their days are numbered. Then silence, broken only by Gregory's cries, discovered days later by a neighbor. The case went cold, suspects faded, and leads dried up. Until 2023, when Kouroumblis was arrested in Italy, extradited back to Australia, in charge. A twist no one saw coming. But is he the killer, or a scapegoat caught in a desperate bid to close the file? The trial could unearth secrets buried for decades, witnesses long forgotten, clues overlooked in the haze of time. Or it could leave us stranded, with more questions than answers. After nearly 5 decades, will the Easey Street murders finally get justice? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you buy the DNA story, or does this feel like a puzzle still missing pieces? Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell, because when the verdict drops, you won't want to miss what happens next. This is Melbourne's oldest cold case, and the truth is closer and murkier than ever.